Here are the fantasy follows, top 5 players to target on the waiver wire for week 14 of fantasy football. The top player to target this week is Adrian Peterson, running back for the Detroit Lions, currently rostered in 49% of all leagues. Before we go through all the information for these players this week, let me note, if this is the first week of your playoffs, which for most of you it is, or if perhaps your playoffs start next week, and this might be a must-win week for you, you really should, unless there's some reason not to, you really should be making moves this week. Even if potentially you don't play these players, to keep these players away from the teams you're playing, this is the time to really go after it. This is the time to win your fantasy leagues. So as we say here, Adrian Peterson, the top pick. There are a couple of players here who the status of other players on their rosters will make a difference. In this case, it's DeAndre Swift. Now, Swift may potentially be back. If he's not this week, for sure, Peterson has the backfield most likely to himself as he has in the past couple of weeks. If Swift is back, the Lions have already indicated that they may not work him in quickly. They may slow him down a little bit. So Peterson gets the number 1 spot because I think he still has value either way. And his next 2 weeks, 2 great matchups. Green Bay currently allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to the running back spot, and Tennessee currently allowing the 7th most. At number 2, it's Ty Johnson, running back for the New York Jets, currently rostered in 4% of all leagues. The player to watch here is Frank Gore. Gore left the last game with concussion. If he cannot go, it will likely be Johnson getting the bulk load of the work here for the Jets. And last week in that situation, 104 yards and a touchdown, 2 catches and 13 yards through the air. That was 19.7 fantasy points versus the Raiders. A great player to pick up this week. Just a middling matchup, playing the Seahawks this week, allowing the 15th most fantasy points to the running back spot. At number 3, it's J.D. McKissic, running back for the Washington football team, currently rostered in 49% of all leagues. The player to watch here is Antonio Gibson, currently dealing with turf toe. It looks like Gibson most likely will not play this week, so certainly the value goes up for McKissic. Not a great matchup playing the 49ers, currently allowing the 7th fewest fantasy points to the running back spot, but still some value to be gotten there. Last week, when Gibson went out, McKissic only 8 yards on the ground, but 10 catches, 70 yards through the air. That was 17.8 fantasy points overall against Pittsburgh. At number 4, it's T.Y. Hilton, wide receiver for the Colts, currently rostered in 46% of all leagues. 2 nice weeks in a row now for Hilton. He's at 191 yards in the last 2 weeks, 2 touchdowns during that span. Last week, 110 yards, 8 catches with a touchdown, 25.0 fantasy points against Houston. A very nice run of games. Las Vegas, Houston, Pittsburgh, the next 3 for your playoffs. All of them right in the middle to just above halfway. Vegas, 14th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Houston, who we just played last week, 10th. And then Pittsburgh right in the middle at 16th. So a decent run there for Hilton. He could have some value to your team. And at number 5, the first, I think, defense that I've included on one of these lists this year. But obviously the reason is it's playoff time. And the Arizona defense currently rostered in 21% of all leagues. As you look at their run of games during these playoffs, weeks 14, 15, and 16, they have the Giants, the Eagles, the 49ers, currently allowing the 7th, 4th, and 8th most fantasy points to defenses. Potentially, as you look at this run, they could be playing 3 backup quarterbacks here. Colt McCoy for the Giants, Jalen Hurts for the Eagles, Nick Mullins for the 49ers. If you are in need of a streaming defense, or if you want to keep this defense away from your opponents, this is a very potential valuable team on the defensive side simply because of the teams that they're playing over your playoff run. A couple of bonus ads to look at here for week 14. 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. Logan Thomas for the Washington football team, rostered in 41% of all leagues. Thomas had a very nice game last week against Pittsburgh. 9 targets, 9 catches, 98 yards and a touchdown. That was 24.8 fantasy points. Kiki Cutie for the Houston Texans in the absence of Will Fuller. Cutie, a great game last week versus the Colts. 141 yards, 8 catches. That was 22.1 fantasy points. And then Jordan Reed, tight end for the 49ers, currently rostered in 26% of all leagues. That number really should be higher. He hasn't had the big games yet, but certainly is in play every week. This last week, 4 targets, 3 catches, and a touchdown, 12.2 fantasy points against Buffalo. And then Tim Patrick, a name we've seen quite a few times this year, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, currently rostered in 21% of all leagues. Last week, 44 yards, 4 catches, 2 touchdowns. That was 20.4 fantasy points against the Chiefs. Be sure to join us Sunday for the TFF Live Sunday pregame show. It is really getting down to crunch time for this season of fantasy football. Either you're starting your playoffs or you're making that last push to get there for the next week. Either way, join us Sunday at 12 noon Eastern time. We're with you right up until game time, answering all your fantasy football questions and getting you ready for each of your big matchups. And a little bit more info about us. We are the Fantasy Follow. We are a brand new channel this season on YouTube. If you've been with us all along, you've already subscribed, we thank you for helping us reach our goal of 100 new subscribers. If you are new, we thank you as well. Be sure and hit that subscribe button so that you can get those notifications anytime we have new content. We are also on Twitter at the Fantasy Follow, and that is fantasy spelled FNTSY. And you can send us your fantasy football questions during the week to our Twitter account using the hashtag AskTFFLive, and we'll answer those questions live on our Sunday pregame show. Facebook / The Fantasy Follow, and our website, thefantasyfollow.com.